Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most popular game series of all time. The sheer number of games under its wing has led to many different iterations of the game. The game has a lot to offer. Its vast lore and gameplay is replayable and interesting even 10 years later. But something the game series has never been able to offer is a truly great speedrun.
He flips it downfield and McLaurin!
With it being a time-based game, it's more so a joke that pretty much anyone can tie in a couple of attempts.
But FNAF VR is a bit different. It's a VR game centered around being remakes of the first couple games. But within these remakes are a set of 4 levels, nicknamed Parts and Service, centered around nothing but fixing 4 animatronics as fast as possible. An intense battle for a world record filled with many different glitches and skips. But unlike most speedruns, it's done in virtual reality. An intense competition between a small, elite group of runners over the course of several years. A run that defies most FNAF speedruns with its incredibly fast pace. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the history of Five Nights at Freddy's Parts and Service speedruns. The first run was done by Johnny Blocks on March 20th, 2020, with a time of 2:27. This run is a great introduction to the world of parts and service speedruns. To start, let's go over timing. The run starts when the first level is selected and ends when you put in Foxy's last eye. The timer doesn't pause between selecting levels and continues running until you complete the last animatronic. You must fix 4 animatronics in order, those being Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, and Foxy. Johnny Blocks plays through all 4 animatronics pretty much how you'd expect. First off is Bonnie. To fix Bonnie, you must take off his mask and tune his guitar, which Johnny Blocks did pretty efficiently. Something to note to clear confusion is when the runner heavily pauses in spots, it's because they have to wait for the narrator to finish giving instructions, otherwise they will get jump scared. Johnny Blocks would exit the game right after the level is considered finished to skip having to open a music box after finishing each level. This would save almost an entire minute throughout the run. Now, the next animatronic was Chica. For Chica, you have to clear them of pizza, then get rid of the cockroaches, and finally grab Chica's cupcake. This is one of the most RNG heavy sections of the run, with the optimal cupcake route being a run of 50-50. Johnny Blocks got the less optimal cupcake route, which was a minimal time loss, but he continued the run anyways. The next animatronic is considered one of the most precise in the run. With Freddy, you usually have to clear him out of kids' items, then replace his music box that you totally didn't break. Johnny Blocks did this as efficiently as he could, but he hesitated quite a bit, which was non-optimal. The final section of the run was Foxy. Foxy is considered the most difficult animatronic in the game to speedrun because you have to find specific batteries and put them in specific parts of Foxy. It's incredibly difficult because Foxy will constantly shake, making it difficult to place them in the correct parts. Johnny made it through relatively efficiently, finishing with a final time of 2:27. There were multiple sections that could easily be improved, but overall for the time, it was pretty solid. Now, the run would sit for some time, with no real runners showing interest in beating the run. The reason for this was because individual level runs usually have little competition. They often sit with an unoptimal world record for months, if not years at a time. Despite some being full of potential, they rot as nothing but another category on speedrun.com. But surprisingly, maybe because of the popularity of the game, or maybe the fast-paced nature of parts and service, the next run would be submitted a couple months later, by the runner Sino. Sino is primarily known for his FNAF analog horror videos, but for some reason or another, he decided to take on a different type of horror, speedrunning. Sino saw Johnny Blocks' run and knew it could be further optimized, so on August 11th, he would submit a run 16 seconds faster than Johnny's run. His run was a much more refined version of Johnny Blocks' run. He hesitated much less on Freddy, and had a much quicker Foxy, saving almost all the time from those 2 levels, getting Sino a 2:11. A solid run. Well, there was a single problem. At its core, this run was just a fast playthrough. When most think of speedruns, they imagine crazy game-breaking skips and massive tricks to save time. This run, at its current state, it really couldn't be called a speedrun. More so just a fast playthrough. It's maybe a reason for the run's popularity at the time. But surprisingly, instead of a several month wait in between runs, someone would immediately respond. A legend in the parts and service history, infamous for a streak of dominance in the category. A runner by the name of Gunthorpe 63210, or as I'm going to refer to him, Gunthorpe. Gunthorpe would see Cyno's run and take heavy interest in the category. He hadn't really speedrun much, or if not at all, because he found normal speedruns pretty boring. He never liked the idea of sitting down and playing through a single game over and over again, but he would take an interest in the run because of its quick pace and it being in virtual reality, meaning it was a lot more active than normal speedruns. He would start grinding attempts after seeing Cyno's 211 and would beat it a couple times, but it was never anything he was happy with. So he wouldn't submit any of these runs. Until one run came along. He would get on a pace. He made it through Bonnie alright, hesitating a bit. He also got through Chica at a decent pace, pre-opening the pizza box to skip having to wait for the animation at the end. But because it was slow Bonnie, he was 2 seconds behind world record. He would have to play through Freddy and Foxy near perfectly to get the record. He would play pretty much perfectly, getting him a 201. Now, the obvious goal was pretty much set in stone now. Sub 2. To take a digit off a run is almost always an achievement in speedrunning. It meant a lot to the runners at the time, and was used to further fuel optimizations. Both Freddy and Foxy could be improved to just barely edge out a sub 2. But would he do it? I mean, the time was already pretty solid, with around 5 or so seconds left to optimize. It would make sense if they left it there. But something you just don't realize about Gunthorpe yet. It's his inability to give up.
Never back down, never what?
He wouldn't just get a sub 2. Gunthorpe would do something that would crush his previous time, making prior attempts look dated, adding many new strategies to the simple 2-minute run. This truly couldn't be thought of as just a fast playthrough anymore. This was a speedrun. His first optimization was pressing the pause menu and pre-selecting the quit game button, and getting it to the confirm screen. This would save almost 6 seconds over Johnny's initial strategy. But that wasn't where time saves ended. In Freddy, he realized when pulling out a specific object, that being the child's shoe, you don't actually have to wait for the latch to move, and can instead just barely slide the shoe under it. It's an incredibly difficult strategy that saves around 4 to 5 seconds. These two optimizations, along with faster, more smooth movement overall, would absolutely crush not only his prior run, but the sub 2. With the final time being 1:45, the second biggest time jump in the category's history, taking 5 whole seconds off the world record. But something interesting happened. It's shown time and time again in history, an age-old tale. Let me ask you something. What is the last possible thing you should do when you beat someone? Taunt the opponent. The last thing you should do is give your opponent a reason to win. But Gunthorpe never heard this idea, this old tale. He decided to make a statement to Cyno. See, the same day Cyno got a 154, Gunthorpe got a 145, causing Gunthorpe to taunt Cyno. This taunt would be enough to warrant Cyno to make it his sole mission to beat Gunthorpe. 16 days later, he would respond to Gunthorpe's run with a 143. This run had some, as I would put it, some real fucking movement, which would save majority of the time. Take this as a lesson. Never taunt your opponent. It never goes well. After this run, the category would see a period of inactivity. Gunthorpe really didn't have it in him to beat Cyno's run. So, in the end, karma really did take its course, with Cyno being on top. Now, the run would see a period of inactivity once again. Except this time, almost an entire year later, a new runner to the scene would submit a world record run. A runner by the name of ERRORNAMEMISSING, or as I'm going to refer to him, Error. Error was yet another runner who would come along to challenge the record. Like Gunthorpe, Error didn't have much prior speedrunning experience, but he was attracted to the idea of speedrunning a shorter, much more action-packed speedrun in VR. But his run wouldn't just shave off a couple of seconds. On May 13th, the prior runners of the game would wake up to a time that crushed the prior records. A 1:36. How is this run possible? With the current knowledge, this run shouldn't be possible. What strategies did he use? Well, he did use one new strategy, nicknamed chord skip. It's done when repairing Bonnie, by spamming the first of Bonnie's tuners. It bugs out the game and allows you to skip the second, normally required narrator speech. Usually you have to wait until Bonnie's tuner finishes playing all the way through, but with chord skip, you didn't have to wait and could instead just immediately put back his eyes in and put his mask back on, saving almost 6 seconds over this former strategy. With a smooth Chica, Freddy, and Foxy, Error would get a 1:36, saving 7 seconds over the previous world record. While Error was celebrating, Gunthorpe just wouldn't let this record go. His competitive nature wouldn't let him. With some friendly competition brewing between them, 10 days later, Gunthorpe would beat Error's run by a second. It was done by basically just optimizing Error's strategies, along with a slightly quicker Freddy and Foxy. A solid run, just barely taking the record. Neither Error nor Gunthorpe really wanted to give up this record, with them bickering back and forth with it whenever they got a record. Roughly 2 weeks later, on June 9th, 2021, the record would take yet another leap, a 1:31 by Error. Something was different about this run, however. To be blunt, this run's movement was, once again, on another level. He started using load-in screens to place his hands in the right spot. Along with that, several times during the fade-in, he would start repairing the animatronics immediately. This was incredibly difficult and shows the time he spent with the game, and it led to Error saving almost a second per animatronic. Both Bonnie and Chico were as solid as they come. With only minimal movement errors, his Freddy was flawless. Finally, his Foxy? The chef's kiss. This run was truly something else. It was the peak of optimization for this run. There were no real obvious time saves looking at the run. I mean, his movement was near perfect, there weren't any obvious time saves within the level. So, what could be optimized? Would this run just stand the test of time? Well, one person determined to beat it. Error's arch rival, Gunthorpe. He would begin his world record attempts. As his attempts grew from double digits to triple digits, his attempts got closer and closer to the record, more and more optimized. His attempts grew in numbers, 150, 160, growing closer to the record, 170, 180. He was becoming a true parts and service master. 190, 200. He finally had a breakthrough. See, Gunthorpe had an idea. Instead of looking for time saves within the levels themselves, why not look outside of them? Between each animatronic, you had a menu to the lobby to get to the next animatronic. This is usually done by selecting the arrows to go to the Parts and Service tab, then holding down the button to select the level. It would normally take a while to wait for the game to fade in, maneuver to the Parts and Service menu, then finally click down the button to select the level. This maneuver is incredibly slow. How could it be improved? Well, Gunthorpe realized something essential. You can actually select the first night in FNAF 1, and as the game is fading in, quickly menu over to the Parts and Service menu and select which animatronic you want to go to. This skips having to wait while pressing and holding the select button because it's being held during the fade-in from the last animatronic. It could surprisingly save almost 10 whole seconds over the course of the run. After a couple attempts of discovering this, it would happen. Not only would he beat Error's run, he would take the world record by almost 5 seconds, achieving the world's first sub 130. The run would take a massive standstill. Despite there being obvious room to optimize, why? Well, the runners had reached a massive milestone within the run, sub 130. This time by Gunthorpe would sit for a couple months, until they finally decided this was it. the last theoretical possible Barry in Five Nights at Freddy's parts and service speedruns, the run to end all runs, the sub 120. This time was put on a pedestal. It wasn't even 100% known if it could be done. A time one could only see from a distance. But the runners would continue, traveling towards this mythical time. Traveling towards a time they weren't even sure was possible. A time that would showcase everything this small group of runners wanted to show the world. Neither Gunthorpe or Error knew if it could be done. But all they could do was grind. On December 15th, 2021, it would finally be done. The final time of 119. Gunthorpe's impossible time was finally achieved. Not by him, however, but by Error. The community would make jokes about finally achieving the time Gunthorpe believed to be impossible. This is actually the final run as of Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. A run many may not know about, but a legendary one at that. A run defined by its absurd difficulty. A run hidden from the world in a small, individual level speedrun. A run that... it's just damn good. Anyways, that's its story. Thanks for watching. If you want to support me, I'd appreciate it if you could show the people that made these documentaries possible some support. I'll leave the runners' channels in the description. Finally, if you want to make me truly happy, just try out this category yourself. I get enjoyment from showing people these underrated runs, in hopes maybe they get more attention. Anyways, see you next week.